Hey everybody, how's it going? And welcome back to my channel, Reading in the Dark. My name is Byron and I read sometimes. This is going to be my December TBR, or if you'd rather think of it this way, this is basically my TBR for the rest of the year. Those are both the same thing. You may be excited to know that the green Christmas tree mug is back. Ooh, look, you can see steam rising off of it. At least I can. I had some lovely hot cocoa in here. It must seem like I am having hot cocoa a lot if you watch this channel often, but in fact, I kind of don't have it that much, but I do have it a lot when I'm in camera. I've had it more recently because here in Florida, no, Philip, now is not a good time. Love you, mean it. Lately here in Central Florida, we've had something of a cold snap. Of course, I put that in quotations because in Orlando, a cold snap, maybe it's 40 something in the evening. And then the thing about living here is that you might have a day where it's in the 30s at night and 40s, 50s, and low 60s in the day. But then the next day you'll be 80. So like there's no telling. Anyway, cold snap, which means I'm miserable. I actually spent enough years of my life living where it was cold. I went to high school in the Chicago area, spent more than my share of time, waiting for the bus in the frigid sub-zero temperatures and like a snowdrift. I went to college or university in upstate Wisconsin, which is in a town called Stevens Point, which is north of Madison. It's very cold. It's almost Canada. And then I lived in New York City for several years, and so had my share of times waiting for a taxi or the subway underground, late at night when it was freezing cold, and subway cars that had heat and subway cars that sometimes don't have heat because the heat's broken or whatever, or for some reason some terrible person opened the window and nobody can figure out how to close it, so whatever. I've spent enough of my time, of my life, in my 38 years of life, being cold, so I live in Florida, and I want Florida to behave like Florida. And when it gets really cold here in Florida, I sort of consider that breach of contract. So I want my money back. Therefore, I'm complaining a lot. And also I'm having hot cocoa. So, cheers. Can you see that steam? And yes, this is spicy alcoholic hot cocoa, so you're welcome. Make some for yourself. It's just some dark chocolate Swiss Miss mix and a lot of cinnamon and a little tiny bit of nutmeg and a little tiny bit of cayenne pepper and a shot of Fireball, and you're good to go. Or you can omit the Fireball and not have alcohol, but that would be no fun for me. Okay, so for this TBR, I am going to be putting myself through like 4 challenges. I like that I did that so that you'd know what 4 was. Yeah, so I have 4 challenges for myself, basically 4 goals for my reading for the rest of the year. And the 4 challenges are to read 35 books in 2019, which I think is a fair goal considering the fact that I did basically take 6 months off of my reading. So 35 is fine. I'm at 29 right now. So I got to read 6 things in December, and I think I can do it because December for me is a big reading month. It's easy to be in the mood to read when it's kind of cold out and when you want cozy vibes and stuff. So I want to read 35 books, which means 6 this month. The next goal for me is to read at least 1 nonfiction book to sort of make up for my failure in nonfiction November. Obviously, I'm going to read some Christmassy things, possibly a reread, and then I want to... My main goal for this month in December, was to read as many books as possible that I did not get to in previous readathons in 2019. I can't believe it's December, by the way. I mean, I'm glad that it's December. December's great. November flew by for me, which is actually pretty cool because I don't really usually have a great November. And that's because of my vacation, I think, just the tumult of that. And yes, I used the word tumult in my video, and you're welcome. I will accept your praises now. So the books that I've actually chosen to read, which is the point of this video. Hi, welcome to BookTube. So the nonfiction book that I'm going to read, I think, is the book that I meant to read in October but did not get around to, and that is The Witches by Stacy Schiff. She's a Pulitzer Prize winning historical historian, one who writes about history. She wrote a book about Cleopatra. I'm assuming it was about Cleopatra because it's called Cleopatra. Stay on topic, Byron. So this is The Witches, Salem 1962, which is about, of course, exactly what it seems like it's about. It's about the Salem witch trials and the witch hunts in Salem, Massachusetts. I know enough to know that this is going to be horrifying and like disheartening and not okay. But I'm also sure it's going to be fascinating. I've always wanted to know more about that period of time. So there's lots of blurbs here. It's longish. Oh, it's not as long as I thought it was. It's about 400 pages long. And it has deckled edges. So, I'm all about it. So that's my nonfiction book. What was the next challenge? To read some Christmassy things. So I'm already doing that. I am reading on my Kindle, which I don't need to show you my Kindle, but this is a Kindle, guys. So I was watching a History Channel documentary about the history of Christmas. And the narrator mentions that a lot of our American traditions and sort of like romantic notions about Christmas come from Washington Irving in his book called Bracebridge Hall, in which he writes about, he was traveling abroad and he writes about all of the old traditional holiday traditions at this like traditional English manor house, and how all of the servants and all of the like people who live in the house all get along so beautifully, and they allow them to carouse and be noisy, and it's just a happy, joyful Christmas situation. It's very like idealized. And so they were saying that he kind of is credited with sort of inventing or solidifying a lot of what we think of as our traditional American holiday customs and traditions. What happened is he wrote a collection of like essays and short stories called The Sketches of Geoffrey something. That's mostly read for the short story Rip Van Winkle, but the Christmas stories in it were very popular as well. It was popular enough that those stories were compiled together and bound up and republished under the title Old Christmas. Just those 4 stories, so it's very short. And then he wrote a sequel to that called Bracebridge Hall. So the 4 stories from Sketchbook and then all of Bracebridge Hall were then later combined into a single volume of Christmas things called The Keeping of Christmas at Bracebridge Hall by Washington Irving. And so that's what I'm reading. I ordered on A-Books, I ordered a hardcover edition. I don't remember when it's from. It's very old, I think. It's got a somewhat tattered cover, and there's no dust jacket, but I kind of think that that's sort of like charming and appropriate, so I'm assuming that it's in decent shape. It said fair, so we'll see, but you know, it was like $8, so I'm not complaining. And in the meantime, I'm actually reading the books on my Kindle. I was able to download for free Old Christmas and then Bracebridge Hall. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to read Old Christmas, which is the 4 stories from the sketchbook of Geoffrey What's-His-Face, whose name I could just look up, but it's becoming a lot more fun to just say What's-His-Face. I think what I actually will do is get through Old Christmas on my Kindle and then pause and read the rest of it in the actual volume of The Keeping of Christmas at Bracebridge Hall when that arrives. So if that wasn't complicated enough for you, I don't know what to tell you. But anyway, I'm reading these stories. They're illustrated, and it's really, really charming. As you can see, let's see if we can get that. There we go. Look, there's illustrations. See, it says like preface and things of that nature. So that's one of the first Christmassy things that I'm reading. The other Christmassy things that I'm reading are some of the short stories by Charles Dickens that I didn't get to last year. So let me just consult my list. So last year I read The Chimes and A Christmas Carol. And this year I still have to read The Cricket on the Hearth, The Haunted Man and the Ghost's Bargain, and The Battle of Life. And I'm going to read these in this lovely hardcover edition that I got at Books A Million, actually. But this is very pretty, and it also has the original illustrations. I've showed you this book before, but here. Yeah. And this is an illustration from Christmas Carol. So anyway, it's a beautiful edition. I'm going to read those 3 stories in here. I might read A Christmas Carol again as well. It's going to depend on how I feel. If I don't love the other stories, I might feel like I didn't get my fix of Dickens' Christmasness, and then I'll reread it, but I'm not really sure because I have other things to read. The other thing I might read, which would be a reread, but I loved it so much last year and I bawled and I laughed my butt off, is actually right here. And that is You Better Not Cry by Augusten Burroughs. This is a cute little memoir about Christmas memories of Augusten Burroughs' life. And it was extremely funny, and it was extremely moving, and just heartfelt and sincere, and it like really like affected me, and I absolutely loved it last year. So I think I might reread it because it is short, 170 pages. So that's awesome. This is really great, you guys. If you're okay reading about some Christmas stories that are funny and some that are really sad, it's a beautiful, beautiful collection of stories, and it deals a lot with his relationships with the men in his life. And it's just really funny, and it will make you cry. I don't know, maybe it won't. And it shouldn't, actually, because you better not cry. Anyway, so that's another thing I might read for Christmas. And those are my Christmassy reads. So, the next thing that I had written down for my challenges for December, for the rest of the year, were to read as many of the books that I did not get to from readathons. I think one of those books is a physical book, An Orchestra of Minorities by Chigozie Obioma. I was really excited to read this for Contemporary-a-thon, and I just did not get to it, and I was upset about that. And I forget, there was something about this This looks like a duck, but in the story he has prize chickens, so there was some confusion there in a comment. And so this is a book about a man who's like basically an adaptation of the Odyssey. It's about a man who throws his prize chickens over the railing of a bridge, killing them in order to save the life of a young woman who he sees who's about to throw herself over. So he startles her into not doing it and then wants to win her love and has to go to college or something in order to impress her family enough to be allowed to marry her. And it's a whole fraught journey, and so it's the Odyssey. He's a Nigerian author. I listened to a little tiny bit of the audiobook, and I loved the voice of the narrator, but I decided I did want to read it physically. Well, not even physically, just with my eyes. I did end up pre-ordering this and buying a physical copy, though. So this is the first book that I want to read that I did not get to, and this was from Contemporary-a-thon round 4. So this is from the beginning of the year. And then the other books that I wanted to get to and did not. Okay, so one of them, is also a physical book. I don't know what I'm talking about. And that is The 5 Stages of Andrew Brawley by Shaun David Hutchinson. This tells the story of a young man who loses his family in a car accident and then basically lives in a hospital for a long time and has a coming-of-age situation and meets another boy in the hospital who was horribly burned, and they strike up a friendship, and I don't know much more about it, except that parts of the book are written or told in the form of graphic novel, which is like his hobby, and so he's written this about his own life. So that's obviously one of the reasons that I wanted to have this on paper. I heard some really good things about this book on BookTube, and I wanted to give it a shot. I was intrigued by the cover, even though I don't usually like faces on covers. There was something about this particular photo of this particular model that just like, I don't know, it all worked, and I was intrigued, and I will definitely read this one because it's also not long, and I put it off for so long. And then the next, oh my God, this is also a physical book. I was like, oh yeah, there's only one physical book, and then they were like, actually, they're all physical. It's way up there, hang on. Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. This concerns a circus that comes to town and just shows up one day in this small town. And it's creepy and spooky and circus related, and that's kind of all I need to know, and it's a classic, etc., etc. A darkly poetic tale. It is probably Bradbury's best work, Stephen King. Have we noticed that Stephen King blurbs everything? Because he does. I've never read Bad. This is a book that I meant to read for Spookathon. Ray Bradbury. My family moved when I was in high school, and so I never read Fahrenheit 451. It was required at both of the high schools I went to, but because of the timing of things, we were about to read it, and then I moved to a school that had just finished reading it. So I never read it. So I've never read anything by him. Again, I just feel like I don't need to know that much about this because the setting and the setup alone are enough for me. And the last book that I selected is a thriller by Brandi Reads called Trespassing. I think I need a thriller in here just to make sure that grease the wheels of my reading. Veronica Cavanaugh's grasp on her world is slipping. Her latest round of fertility treatments not only failed but left her on edge and unbalanced, and her 3-year-old daughter Isabella has a new imaginary friend who seems much more devilish than playful. So, when Veronica's husband fails to return home from a business trip, what's left of her stability begins to crumble. Somewhere beneath her paranoia is the answer to her husband's vanishing. To find it, she's led to a house in the Florida Keys. But once there, she isn't sure she wants to know the truth. It has a 4.09 rating on Goodreads, so that's pretty good. So those are the books. There are what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then there are 3 short stories by Dickens. And there's the Bracebridge. So that's more than 6. That certainly does it. I guess technically I could count a short story as a book read because on my Goodreads they're going to be separate because it's just easier to do it that way. We'll see. So those are my, oh my gosh. I have been neglecting my hot cocoa. It's so good, you guys. Can you see that? Those are the books that I want to read in the month of December. I should put this mug right here next to me because it's so pretty. Those are the books. That's ridiculous. Those are the books that I want to read in the month of December 2019 to round out my year. It'll mean that I did finally read a nonfiction, even though it's a little bit late for nonfiction November. It'll mean I'm getting some Christmassy reads, and it'll mean that I'm getting some absolution or some resolution on the readathons that I didn't complete all the books for. And absolution, I guess. I didn't even say anything about my little Christmassy setup back here. I need more of this. I have some Christmas lights. I celebrate Christmas, by the way. I don't know if you noticed that. And here's Mickey Mouse. Mickey is dressed up as Santa here to signify his participation in the Winter Festival. And I've had him on camera before, but before I was in front of a green screen, so the little holly leaves here just disappeared. Oh, and I have chocolate here that I didn't eat. This video is so unfocused. I've got some dark chocolate Reese's. I dropped something. I had some other chocolate and I don't know where it went, so that's a problem. But I'm gonna find it. But you don't need to sit here and wait for me to do that. So that's my video. I hope you enjoyed this rambling, random, disorganized, disjointed video, and that you are having a wonderful reading month. This video is actually a day late because yesterday I was supposed to film this, but instead I cut down a tree in my front yard. It was a tree that I've wanted it out ever since I moved into this house. I mean, I built this house, and they put a tree right smack in the center of my front yard, right in front of the front door. And then the hurricane came a week later after I moved in, closed on the house, and knocked it over. And then like an idiot, I put it back up and strapped it back down. Because I guess I don't know, I would have felt bad if I like pulled it out of the ground because my house was new or something. But I should have just let it die because I didn't want it. But I put it back in. Anyway, it's always been like at a weird angle like this, and it's like scraggly and whatever. So I finally took it out. It was actually not as hard as I thought it would be, but it did take a lot of time, and it was cold outside. I'm very sore today. And so I did that yesterday. When I finally got back in and warmed up again, I was like, yeah, no, I'm not filming a video. I'm so tired and so worn out. So that's why this video is a day late, so I'm very sorry. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video even though it was a day late, and that you're having an enjoyable December thus far. I look forward to your comments below if you have anything to say about the books that I've chosen. Feel free to do that. The comment box is your friend. If you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate very much if you hit the thumbs up button. That helps me a lot. And if you love this video and you'd like to see more content like this in the future, you can always subscribe to my channel, and that helps me even more. You guys are awesome. I appreciate you being here so much. And until next time, I will be here in the dark with my hot cocoa reading.